Federal agencies and workers across the country are now bracing for mass layoffs.
The United States is set to impose tariffs on Mexico, with 25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico. This move could fundamentally upend the vehicle manufacturing sector in America by halting the export of essential automotive parts. This has disrupted the supply chain that American manufacturers have relied on for many years, setting the stage for a prolonged economic confrontation. The automobile industry in the United States has been intricately linked with production networks in Mexico, which have long relied on factories in Mexico to supply crucial components such as wiring harnesses, transmissions, and complete engine assemblies. The advantages provided by low labor costs, robust and reliable infrastructure, and the closed geographical proximity of Mexico have made it an indispensable partner in vehicle production. However, the imposition of tariffs threatens this enduring relationship. Mexico's countermeasure was not reached impulsively, but was the result of careful planning, strategic analysis, and a steadfast commitment to protecting the nation's economic interests. The just-in-time manufacturing system that American automobile plants depend on requires a continuous daily delivery of components from Mexican suppliers. Without these crucial parts, factories located in states such as Michigan, Ohio, and Kentucky will face immediate and severe disruptions. Production delays may lead to widespread layoffs and significant economic uncertainty for communities that have long depended on the stability provided by the automobile industry. Major automobile manufacturers, including Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, will likely face costly shutdowns and operational challenges that disrupt the rhythm of daily production. Car dealers already contending with inventory shortages may struggle further to meet consumer demand as the supply of new vehicles diminishes. Prices for both new and used cars may surge to unprecedented levels, creating further strain on consumers and adding pressure to a nation already facing economic headwinds beyond the direct impact on production. Politically, the situation carries weighty and far-reaching consequences. President Trump has maintained that tariffs are necessary to protect American jobs by forcing Mexico to renegotiate trade agreements in favor of the United States. However, Mexico's countermeasure places the burden of economic disruption squarely on the shoulders of American workers in the automobile industry. Labor unions and industry leaders are calling for urgent measures to mitigate the damage, while diplomatic tensions between the two nations escalate rapidly. The intricate supply chains connecting the United States, Mexico, and Canada have been refined over decades to maximize efficiency and cost-effectiveness. Any disruption to this network could endanger American automakers' competitive position on the global stage and undermine their collaborative relationships. If production is interrupted for a prolonged period, companies already grappling with supply chain challenges may face setbacks that are difficult to overcome. Finding alternative suppliers for highly specialized components traditionally sourced from Mexico is a task that could demand significant time and substantial investment. Mexico, aware of its critical role in this long-standing trade relationship, is fully aware of its decision to diversify its trade partnerships with countries in Europe, Asia, and South America. This diversification grants Mexico flexibility and economic resilience that the United States currently lacks, shifting the economic leverage in this confrontation. Restructuring the supply chain without the assistance of its traditional partner is likely to be both complex and prohibitively expensive, with ripple effects across multiple segments of the economy. The broader implications of this standoff extend well beyond the automobile industry, as other sectors that rely on the smooth flow of international trade, such as agriculture and retail, may also suffer adverse effects. American farmers exporting billions of dollars worth of produce to Mexico now face the prospect of retaliatory measures, leading to reduced exports and financial losses that could impact entire rural communities. Higher vehicle prices might reduce consumer spending in other areas, creating a domino effect that touches nearly every aspect of the economy. To recover and stabilize both the United States and Mexico, they must find ways to reduce tensions and reestablish a cooperative framework for trade. The future of a well-integrated North American supply chain depends on both nations' ability to navigate this turbulent period and pursue mutually beneficial trade arrangements that support economic growth and stability. The ongoing crisis in the automobile industry has not only impacted the future of the industry, but also the global economy. This crisis has brought to light broader geopolitical considerations, as nations worldwide are watching these developments with great interest. The outcome of this confrontation could set a precedent for future trade disputes, and other countries, particularly those that have traditionally depended on the United States as a major trading partner, may reevaluate their own trade relationships if they perceive current policies as leading to instability and unpredictability. Mexico's bold stance may serve as an inspiration to other nations, encouraging them to adopt similar measures in the face of protectionist policies and potentially reshaping the global trade landscape. This could lead to a more multipolar economic order, where power is more evenly distributed among nations. The human dimension of this economic conflict must not be overlooked, as millions of American workers employed in the automobile industry face the threat of significant job losses and financial insecurity. The promise of economic prosperity is suddenly at risk, and the impact on consumers is equally significant. Disruption in vehicle production is likely to lead to higher prices and a shortage of new vehicles, forcing consumers to hold on to their aging cars for longer periods. This situation may lead to increased demand for repair services and a surge in the market for used cars, where prices could experience significant inflation. Car rental agencies and ride-share services, which depend on a steady supply of vehicles to meet customer needs, may also be forced to contend with rising costs and diminished availability. The cascading effect on consumers reinforces the broader economic implications of this dispute, as every sector feels the strain of an unsettled supply chain in this climate of uncertainty. In conclusion, Mexico's decision to halt the export of essential automobile parts in response to President Trump's tariffs represents a bold and calculated maneuver that carries profound implications for the automobile industry and the global economy. The resolution of this conflict will require careful diplomacy, strategic compromise, and a renewed commitment to cooperative trade practices. Mexico President Claudia Sheinbaum announced a 25% tariff on all cars imported into the United States on Wednesday, claiming that the free trade agreement between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada during the first Trump administration shielded her country. However, she added that her government will focus on the existing 25% U.S. tariffs on imported autos, steel, and aluminum, while accelerating domestic production to safeguard jobs and reduce imports. The U.S. president claimed the measures would spur growth in the U.S. car industry and create jobs and investment. However, this has already crippled the most iconic sector of the U.S. economy, the auto industry. Mexico is America's largest trading partner and has become the #1 exporter of cars to the U.S., sending nearly 3 million vehicles across the border. In total, Mexico exported more than $180 billion worth of cars and auto parts to the U.S., including engines, electronics, and other critical components that American factories rely on. On April 3rd, the U.S. government under newly re-elected President Donald Trump imposed sweeping 25% tariffs on all vehicles and auto parts imported from Mexico. The move was framed as a patriotic stand to force automakers to bring jobs back to American soil. However, what followed was nothing short of economic whiplash. Mexico responded by stopping exporting factories in Mexico and holding back critical auto components out of necessity. Within 24 hours, the flow of goods through key border crossings like the manufacturing hub in Ciudad Juarez dropped by 40%, with $100 million worth of shipments stranded in limbo. Companies were not willing to absorb the sudden massive costs of the new tariffs, leading to temporary layoffs at some of its Canadian and Mexican assembly plants. Nissan pulled 2 of its top-selling Infiniti SUV models from the American market entirely because they were built in Mexico and could no longer be sold without losing money in sales. This unprecedented trade clash reveals the economic chaos already brewing under the surface for decades. The U.S. auto sector, which employs nearly 10 million Americans, is facing a slow-motion collapse due to a trade policy that detonated its own supply line. Mexico's leaders did not scream or threaten, but quietly let the American economy bleed. When questioned, Mexico's newly elected president, Claudia Sheinbaum, simply said there was room for talks, but behind closed doors, the message was clear: do not bite the hand that builds your cars. Mexico's economy minister met with U.S. officials, warning that the tariffs violated the trade agreements both nations had signed under the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Mexico pushed for exemptions, reminding Washington that Mexican factories are not just supplying the U.S., they are co-producing with it. Yet the White House doubled down on their message, stating that bring jobs back home, pay the tariff, and reshore the factories. However, this is not a strategy, it is a wrecking ball, and the fallout is already spreading stock markets, rattled supply chains, and prices get ready. Experts estimate that these tariffs could raise the cost of an average vehicle by several thousand, even if the car is assembled in America. Mexico's economy is getting battered as auto exports make up nearly 1/3 of Mexico's total trade with the U.S. Economists warn that if this standoff continues, Mexico could plunge into recession. The U.S. economy is deeply integrated with its neighbors, not just by treaties, but also by trucks, bolts, wires, and human labor. Unraveling that network is like yanking out a heart valve because you do not like where it came from. The biggest losers are not the CEOs or politicians, but the workers on both sides of the border. Factory workers in Tuca, operators in Michigan, and dealers in Ohio are now watching their livelihoods disintegrate over a political gamble. Mexico is holding back for now, but their restraint is tactical, and their leverage is enormous. If the U.S. does not blink, Mexico could slap tariffs, escalate through USMCA's dispute system, or continue to squeeze the supply chain until the American auto industry has no choice but to scream for mercy. The real question is whether this is the first move in a broader economic reshuffle, where the U.S. tears up old alliances and builds a fortress of domestic manufacturing. The assembly lines are quiet, jobs are vanishing, and the country that was supposed to be America's partner in prosperity has become its greatest economic threat. The auto war has begun and is far from over.